We are moving on to topic 5, lesson 2. I believe it's called the Zhou Dynasty. I guess we'll find out as we start listening. Let's look at our digital notebook quickly. We have page 1. This is just like topic 5, lesson 1 digital notebook. So we have page 1, which is an actual question. Then page 2 is where our vocab questions are. Page 3, we have a couple mastery check questions. Page 4, we have a couple more mastery check questions. Page 5, another mastery check question. And then page 6, a couple questions. I've divided it into 2 pages per video. So there'll be 3 videos. Each video will have 2 pages of your digital notebook on it. So let's go ahead and start listening to the Zhou Dynasty.
Lesson 2. The Zhou Dynasty. Around 1050 BCE, a group called the Zhou attacked the Shang kingdom from the west. They overthrew the Shang ruler and established a new dynasty. The Zhou dynasty ruled for about 800 years. For much of the second half of its rule, however, the Zhou struggled to keep its large kingdom united. The widespread use of iron had much to do with the Zhou dynasty falling. Iron became readily available, and even the peasants had access to iron tools and weapons. With iron weapons readily available to the masses, the result was wars and upheavals.
All right, this first question in this first paragraph, how long did the Zhou dynasty rule? You'll find that answer in this blue highlighted paragraph. Get that now, please. All right, let's go ahead and watch the lesson video. Let me move my face out of the way. Okay, cannot find a good spot for me. There we go.
The first Chinese dynasty that history tells us about was the Shang, whose kingdom was in the North China Plain. They stayed in power for more than 600 years, but then, like most rulers, they finally lost power. Why? Chinese tradition states that the last Shang king was cruel and ruled badly. When an army attacked from the west, people refused to support him. Instead, they accepted the new leaders, who set up a new dynasty, the Zhou. Of course, most of that story of the Shang dynasty's downfall comes from the Zhou themselves, who might be considered biased. But it did set up a theory about the right to rule that became important in all of later Chinese history. It was known as the Mandate of Heaven. According to the idea of the Mandate of Heaven, being a successful ruler meant that heaven, the highest power in nature, approved of what you were doing. If heaven approved, it was okay for you to overthrow the present ruler. In fact, winning would show that you now had the Mandate of Heaven. That was why later rulers and emperors were called the Son of Heaven. A good ruler was supposed to care for the people and keep the country prosperous. But the Mandate of Heaven could also work against you. If the rivers flooded or crops failed or there were rebellions, well, that might be a sign that you had lost the Mandate of Heaven. It might just be time for another dynasty to take over. This pattern of the rise and fall of dynasties became known as the dynastic cycle, and it was repeated many times in Chinese history. The Zhou dynasty took power about 1050 BCE and kept it for about 800 years. But its reign was not always peaceful. At first, the Zhou ruled mainly from the western part of the kingdom, which was their homeland, but gradually they expanded as far south as the Chang, Yangtze River. To manage different peoples and cultures, the Zhou rulers sent other family members to govern distant regions. The Zhou made advances in technology, learning to work with iron. They built roads and issued coins, which made trade easier, but still, after about 300 years, their central power started to fail. Local rulers built walled capital cities and controlled lesser nobles. Nomadic tribes invaded, and some nobles rebelled. Military leaders known as warlords gained power in some small states and then fought among themselves. The later years of the dynasty, from about 475 to 221 BCE, are known as the Warring States period. Fighting spread all over the countryside. It seemed clear to many people that the Zhou had lost the Mandate of Heaven. The last Zhou ruler lost power in 256 BCE, but no new dynasty took over right away. Eventually, though, the dynastic cycle would begin all over again. According to the dynastic cycle, what would happen next after the fall of the Zhou dynasty?
Let's go ahead and go back to how we were. All right. Let's move on to our vocab words. We have mandate of heaven. In ancient China, the presumed right to rule given to a dynasty by heaven, the highest force of nature. Again, you just heard in that video, if a person had the mandate of heaven, it meant he could overthrow the current king. Warlord is a military ruler. Chaos, well, we know what chaos is. Total disorder and confusion. You should already know these three words as you've already defined them in your prayer. So go ahead and take this time to get those words defined in your digital notebook.